So guys, one of the most common questions I hear amongst new turkey hunters is when and how to call turkeys. And today we're going to talk about just that and try to unpack some of the best knowledge I can on what you need to do to be successful in the spring turkey woods. And we're doing it right now. So guys, when we talk about hunting turkeys and when and how to call to them, one thing that you really need to understand first about that is the behavior of the turkeys. And the best thing you can do is just really get an understanding on what the turkeys are doing throughout the season. Just like right now, you know, we're in mid-March, the early spring as we would call it, and turkeys are still kind of in those big winter flocks. And it's not uncommon to drive around and see a big flock of maybe, 15 to 20 hens together, and then seeing 5, 6, 7, 8 toms running around together still. But as season progresses, those toms' testosterone level will start rising, and they'll start seeking out those hens, and they'll enter into those flocks, and what will happen is the pecking order will be established. So the hens and the toms alike, they'll be sparring with one another, running each other off, and that's when you'll start seeing these little groups of maybe 5, 6 hens and a gobbler, or you might see like 10 hens still with a single gobbler, or you might see a group with 2 toms running around. But one thing to keep in mind with that too is that's constantly changing. That could change as season progresses. You might see 2 weeks before season comes in, you might see 2 toms with a group of about 8 hens, and they might peel off and now be 2 separate flocks by the time season rolls in. So it's a constantly changing thing. But the point being is that it's a dynamic thing, and they're right now starting to develop those pecking orders and find out what these flocks are going to be. And understanding that is going to help you to understand the behavior of the turkeys and the situations that you're likely to face on a regular basis, early season throughout into late season. Now, when we talk about late season, as it progresses, the hens and these flocks will start going to the nest, and these toms will then start seeking out. So if all of their hens are on the nest, well, now you've got that lone tom again, and he's still looking for company, so to speak. And so that's when you can really capitalize on some boss toms. The better you understand the behaviors of the turkeys and what they're doing throughout the season, the better you're going to be able to be fluid in those situations and know what calling scenario might work. And is this to go in there, for example, on a tom and be real aggressive that might have 6 or 8 hens. That aggressive calling, I'm not going to say it won't work, because if you can get a hen fired up and maybe tick her off, well, then you might be on the money right there. I've seen it time and time again where I'll be out just kind of walking and squawking, as I call it, and I strike a hen. She calls back, and what do? I mimic every single thing that she does, and I want to get really aggressive with her, get her ticked off, have her come looking for me. And oftentimes I've seen it where an old tom is right there in tow with her, and he might not ever gobble, but you hear him strolling up there and you hear him spitting and drumming right behind her. He's been right up her rear end for the whole morning, and you get her ticked off, and here she comes, and he's right behind her, and that's exactly what you want to see. So the big point is that understand the behavior, and just understand that it is definitely a situational thing. You can't find just this one size fits all plug and play how to call turkeys in the spring. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is turkey hunting in general is regional as well. And what I mean by that is, like, you might go to some places where the turkey populations are high and the competition is high amongst the gobblers, and you can be super aggressive right there early in the morning and not have any problems with it. But where I hunt mostly here in the southeast, then oftentimes if I go in there and I know that I've got a group of 8 to 10 hens with a gobbler, and I'm sitting there trying to cut and yelp at him all morning, then he's going to know something's not right. He kind of knows his little group, and he'll be on his way. And I'll tell you a quick story because I think it's a good way to illustrate understanding the behavior of turkeys. This has been several years ago, and I had on opening morning, I went in there. I'd been watching this bird for a couple of weeks, and I knew he had a big old flock of hens, and he was a boss tom. And I went in there and got set up, and I started my little morning routine, so to speak. And within a half hour or so after fly down, here was this big group of turkeys in front of me. I had there was probably 6 to 8 hens, and there was the tom out there just almost staying in one spot, full strut, as all these hens kind of traverse throughout the woods. And that's not uncommon to see, because again, he has his hens, and he will just sit there and kind of strut and gobble. That's why a lot of times they're gobbling on the roost, and then they get quiet. They'll fly down to a spot, and they don't need to gobble now because the hens are kind of around him. He'll just sit over there and spit and drum and just strut around, sometimes in like a very small area, as all these hens kind of do their thing milling around, and they'll work their way back to him, and then when they're ready and they start walking elsewhere, he's going to go right there and tow with them. And so it's very unlikely that you're just going to peel him off of there, you know, 100 yards away from his group to come see, well, what's this lonely hen? He kind of knows who his girls are. He sees them all, and he knows everything seems normal. We've already been through this pecking order that we've been talking about. There's no sense in me going over there. Now, a strategy for that right there would be, if your season allows it to where you can hunt in the afternoon. A lot of times these hens, you know, not so much in the early season, but a lot of times they still might break off and not be in that big group midday into the afternoon. And so you can sometimes slip in there and catch that tom spending some time by himself, and you might be able to slip up on him. But again, going back to a little bit of my story on this, we can only hunt until noon here in Virginia the first part of season. And so I went in there opening day. Again, he stayed out there, you know, 75, 80 yards, watched him in the woods. Next morning I went in there and kind of tried a different angle on him, kind of the same thing. They stayed just out of gun range on me, and so I just had to kind of just sit there and let them do their thing. Well, by day 3, I had been collecting all this data, and I had it pretty well figured out that I knew if I went in there and got on this little finger that went out into the swamp, I said, well, he's basically roosting on this peninsula. He's flying down on this top, he's assembling his girls, and then he's shutting up, and they're just kind of spending the morning milling around through these hardwoods along this swamp edge. And I said, I'm going to be right there where he does his like assembly, and I'll be one of the first ones that he wants to come running over there to strut up to. And so as I made my way into the woods, butt crack dark as I call it, I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted to sit up. So I just stood up against this big old tree. I think it was a beech tree. And I'm standing there waiting for the sun to break and maybe for him to gobble to where I can decide, do I want to move a little bit or where am I going to go? And I carry a real wing with me. And so I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and get it out. And as I reached in my vest to pull it out, it raked the bark right there on that beech tree. And as soon as I did, he gobbled. He was about 40 yards behind me, if that. And I did not expect him to be roosted there, but all I could do was just stand still and just melt myself down on the base of that tree. Now, as I sat down, I realized there was a big old holly tree that came up right beside it, and that might have helped me in that it gave me a little bit of cover, because he probably knew something wasn't right at that point. And I'm thinking, this is perfect. He's gonna fly down on this top right up here, left-handed shooter. I'm gonna be right on him as I hear him pitching out. And I'm just waiting. Well, what does he do? He dips down right at the base of the tree. Rather than flying out, right at the base of the tree he goes. And so here I am now. I had to swing and put my gun almost at 180 degrees behind me. When I went to bead up and look for where my bead was at, it was covered in these holly limbs. And I had to basically stretch myself up to get up over that holly tree to shoot him almost at 180 degrees behind me. And what I'm getting at with that is that basically I was able to harvest that bird without even a single yelp or a cluck or even a whine or a purr. I went in there and I just knew the bird's behavior, and I knew that it would work. Now I almost got busted on that, and it almost didn't work out, but it wound up being an awesome bird, and it was a great hunt still. Now granted, you were talking to somebody that loves to hear a turkey gobble, and there's guys out there that'll say, oh, well, if he don't come in there strutting all perfect for me and he don't come to my call, then I don't even want to hunt him. And I'm like, okay, well, that's good for you, it ain't good for me. That right there, I understood that bird's behavior. I understood the dynamics of his little harem, and I got in there, I'd done my homework, and I was able to come out about 22 pounds heavier. And so that's what I'm talking about. If you want to be successful in the spring turkey woods, then understanding the behavior of the birds and what's going on throughout the season, that's going to be one of the #1 things that will help you. Now, another thing I want to talk about is that turkey hunting and turkey calling, there's a regional aspect to that too, because you go to some places where the birds, you can call very aggressive throughout the season to them. There's big populations, the competition is high out there, there's constantly toms trying to run in on top of these groups, and you can get in there and you can be aggressive and you can find success that way. But if you go to certain places, you hunt in the south, you hunt here in the southeast where I'm at, then if you get out there and you're super aggressive, every single time you're calling, your chances of being able to call a tom in I'm not saying that you can't find that lonely Tom or that hot 2-year-old that's going to come running in there with his head on backwards. It does happen, and I love it when it does happen, but you have to understand that the region and where you're hunting is very important about the amount of calling and the aggression that you're putting in your calling. And I'll give you another little case in point with that. Just last year I was up in Wisconsin, and we go in there on this setup, and the guy I was hunting with, he had told me, he said, yeah, you know, we had hunted this bird last week and they stayed out of range, whatnot. And, you know, in my mindset, I'm thinking of like back home, you got a bird that's been, you know, toyed with some, and I don't want to go in there and just like be laying it on him. And so I get in there and I set up on this hunt, and birds are jamming on the other side of the river. They're just ba-da-da. And we get in there and we set up, and there's 3 gobblers roosted on the other side of the river, and they are jamming, just hitting every time. And I had not even really started calling. Did a few little soft tree yelps and just really kind of got quiet. Well, the whole time, Mike, the guy that I'm hunting with, he's sitting back there thinking, well, when the hell is he going to start calling? He wants me to start cranking it up. Well, in my mind, I'm like, no, I'm wanting these birds to get on the ground. I've made a couple little soft notes at them. They know I'm over here. They're going to come looking for me. As the morning progressed, they had flown down. They actually pitched down on our side of the river, and they were just over a little lull where we couldn't see them. And I cranked out some calls, and they jammed. At that point, I was like, okay, they're on the ground right in front of me. They can't see me, so I was going to lay it on thick. Well, when I did, man, it was like the gates broke loose. They both just started. There were 2 of them that showed up, but both of them just started just hammering one after another. And I laid it on thick. And the point that I'm trying to make, though, is after the hunt, and I was successful, well, Mike, he said, no, you got to call these birds. If you've got their attention, you lay it on. So the rest of the time that I was in Wisconsin, I was able to lay it onto them like I'm not really used to. And so again, it's when it comes to the area you're hunting, the bird populations, all that stuff plays into it. And you got to kind of take it a case by case and be fluid with the decisions that you're making while you're out there turkey hunting. So guys, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Just getting out there and keep on trying. The more you keep trying, the more mistakes you're going to make. The more mistakes you make, the more you're going to learn. The more you learn, the more success you're going to find in the spring turkey woods. I love helping you guys out. If you got any questions specifically, drop me a comment below or shoot me a PM. I love helping you guys out and trying to make us all better turkey hunters. So I look forward to the next video, and I'm looking forward to turkey season. It's right around the corner. So you guys be practicing those calls, and let's get ready to get with it.